With all of the new news and rumors regarding Spider-Man 3, I thought it was time for me to stop and rank all 9 Spider-Man and Venom films ranked from the worst to the best. Hey everyone, S-Dub Nation here, and welcome back to a brand new Marvel video here in the channel. Please note that everything that we will say in this video is just our very own opinion. Our lists are certainly not the right list, it's just our list, and I'm joined with my good friend Jonathan here today.
Let's do it.
Alright. So, you are free to comment down below your ranking of all 9 Spider-Man and Venom films ranked from the worst to the best, just like us, or you could just do your favorite. Like, comment, and subscribe, and without further ado, let's get into our ranking. Kicking off my list at number 9 has got to go to The Amazing Spider-Man 2. It's something about this film that is fascinating with the backstory of it. It was just so many studio cuts and their hands were just put inside of this film so much that it just kind of sabotages the project. Obviously, there were hints at a Sinister Six film that did not come to light. There was an Amazing Spider-Man 3 film that did not come to life. There are a lot of main plots and subplots that are trying to battle each other to be the main plot, but it just does not work. And it falls apart, in my opinion. It does have great CGI. It does have great action sequences. The web slinging is great, but that just does not bring it up for me. But also, I really do love the chemistry between Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone this go around.
Coming in at my number 9 is actually Venom. Now, I just had to put Venom here because every other movie on this list, I just enjoy it more than Venom. I like Venom, but I don't want to rewatch the movie because there's really not enough Venom, and I feel like it's limited by its rating. I feel like with Venom, they could have done a lot more with an R rating. And I'm not saying they had to be bloods and guts everywhere, but I just feel like they could have done more violent things as Venom. And I do like Tom Hardy's performance in this. I like the chemistry between him and Venom, but the villain is kind of lame. The love interest is pretty forgettable. And just all around, I think I would just classify the movie as forgettable. But I am excited for the sequel.
That's a great explanation because my number 8 is Venom also.
What a coincidence.
This was actually like a last minute ranking for me because I actually had Amazing Spider-Man 2 at number 8. I feel like the chemistry between, like you said, Eddie and Venom, it worked for me. It's very fun. It's very enjoyable to me. And I really enjoyed like everything when it got into the Venom stuff. But leading up to it and the plot itself of the entire movie is not very well handled. Like you said, the villain sucks. The love interest, she sucks. Just overall, everything that's not regarding the Venom and Eddie relationship and everything revolving around them just comes off as boring.
Well, my number 8 is actually Amazing Spider-Man 1. That might be a surprise to you, but Amazing Spider-Man 1, the biggest thing that just turns me off from the movie is the suit. I just think the suit is very ugly, but I just find this movie just pretty not enjoyable to watch. I do like Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man, and it's got the classic stuff. You got Uncle Ben, but I just think the Lizard, it's kind of a lame villain, and like the third act is just kind of iffy. The swinging is okay, and there's some good combat scenes in there, but overall, I just think Amazing Spider-Man 1 is just not a film that I enjoy watching as much as I thought I did.
Yeah, I agree with you on the suit part. The Amazing Spider-Man 2 suit is so much better. Coming in at my number 7 for me has got to go to Spider-Man 3. I really enjoy Spider-Man 3. Like, I really like Spider-Man 3. Spider-Man 3 was another film that was sabotaged by studio interference. And I feel like if Sam Raimi was given free reign to do what he wanted to do, I feel like this one could have been an amazing trilogy ender. It was good, but it wasn't necessarily great and amazing, spectacular. It was still a good movie, and I really enjoyed it. But I just feel like the Venom stuff, it worked, and the Sandman stuff kind of worked, but when they're all inside of the same movie, it just becomes overly stuffed, and they try to do too many things that just did not work.
I could see that. I could see that.
Yeah.
Coming in at my number 7 is gotta go to Spider-Man 1. I'm just not too big of a fan of Sam Raimi's style of the way he made this movie. Like, I'm not that big of a fan of the overly comic book campy style. Well, it is funny at some parts, like the Green Goblin's death. Like, I just don't like Kirsten Dunst as MJ. Like, she's just I just don't like damsels in distress. and it's just kind of aggravating sometimes, especially once he becomes later in the later trilogies. It's just very aggravating. But I do think Willem Dafoe, Green Goblin, is a standout in this movie. Tobey Maguire, while he's not my favorite Spider-Man, I can see why people love him so much. I was kind of a late bloomer when it came to liking this movie.
Yeah, man, you know what? It's whatever. Coming in at number 6, Spider-Man 2. I'm just kidding. Coming in at number 6, Amazing Spider-Man. I honestly feel bad for putting the Amazing Spider-Man film so low because they had great potential. There was something here in the Amazing Spider-Man that could have launched this franchise forward. And I feel like, well, Andrew Garfield is not my favorite Spider-Man, but he is the best actor. He perfectly portrays the Spider-Man that was actually created for this film. The chemistry between the characters, even Uncle Ben, I really like. It just makes it feel more grounded. Everything else about this film, the chemistry between the characters, the web slinging, the action, I really like. But thanks to the second one, it just undercut this duology as a whole for me.
My number 6 is actually Amazing Spider-Man 2. Like, dang, I actually enjoy watching this movie. I love the web swing. I think it's some of the best in the series. And Andrew Garfield perfectly, in my opinion, captures like the Spider-Man who's like, he's the New York Spider-Man. You see him swinging, he's saying, hello, pedestrians. Like, it's just really cool. But now I can't ignore the places that this movie is dragged down by. A lot of villains, kind of stupid plot. Like, I agree, the thing with his parents is kind of stupid. Just the whole thing that Peter was chosen to be Spider-Man. I don't really think people like that.
I think it was much better if like it was like he's person. A nobody.
Yeah,
exactly. Anybody could be.
Anybody could have been by that spider. But I actually do like the interactions between him and Harry. So like this movie, I get why people hate on it. I feel like it gets a little too much hate, but there are some enjoyable parts in here.
Kicking off my top 5 list has got to go to Spider-Man: Far From Home. This movie is probably one of the most funniest MCU films out there. But I feel like where it gets too funny, it kind of undercuts the dramatic elements of it.
You did say that when we watched it.
Yeah, like I'm like, okay, it's funny, haha, hee hee. All right, now let's get serious. You know what I mean? Like this is still Spider-Man, right? Like this is not like Peter and his friends on a road trip. So I feel like, yeah, I like the fact that they're taking a different route with Spider-Man. I like the fact that it's more high school-esque. And I also like the fact that it's more funny. But when it gets to be too funny, like I said, you undercut the dramatic elements. Also, I really love Mysterio, that little action sequence inside of the S.H.I.E.L.D. base. I really love that. That's one of the top 10 best sequences inside of the MCU. But the Edith stuff is just like a low for me. So there's not really any low lows. But there's certainly not any of those high highs as the first movie in this Tom Holland Spider-Man was.
My number 5 is Spider-Man 2. Now, listen. The one reason that ruined this movie for me was of how overhyped it was. So when I finally took the time to sit down and watch it, I was like, wow, it's kind of like how with Batman Begins. I was like, wow, it was pretty good, but I don't really see that as the best Spider-Man interpretation. But I think Doc Ock is a great villain, but I don't really like the whole like little Aunt May thing where like she's like the one in trouble. I'm just not a big fan of it. And I think that's what ruined this movie for me, is just how overhyped it is. You have MJ being a damsel in distress again, which I said I don't like. But overall, this movie is pretty good. I can kind of see why people rate it as the highest, but I just think it's super overrated.
At my number 4, I have the original Spider-Man. Just what Sam Raimi did for this comic book genre as we know it, it started with Spider-Man. It started with Blade, Spider-Man, X-Men, but it mainly started with Spider-Man. And I think what Sam Raimi does with this film that works so well is that this is the classic Spider-Man origin story. He gets bitten by the spider. You have the wrestling match. He wants to get the money. You can see how his actions led to Uncle Ben's death. I just like the fact that it's just a simple origin story. A guy, something happens to him, and he uses his powers for good. And it just, it's just like a straightforward origin story. William Dafoe, great as the Green Goblin. A little bit overacting, but I just like it because, it's early 2000s. I like early 2000s movies. So what this film does for the movies down the line, I think it holds a special place in my heart.
My number 4 is Spider-Man 3. Now, Spider-Man 3, Yeah, Spider-Man 3. Spider-Man 3 is a weird threshold for me where I said I don't like the campiness and the overtop. But this one is so campy and over the top that it's actually like funny. Like you have the whole emo Peter dancing and I always laugh when I see that scene because I'm like, "Come on, what is he doing?" Like he would never do that. And you see him getting all like smooth and like the jazz bar like he's suddenly at the piano like jumping around on tables. I know it has the problem where it's got way too many villains. You got Sandman, you got Venom, uh, that's it,
New
right? It's
Green
just oh
Goblin.
yeah, new Green Goblin. You knew this was coming, Pete. Like the acting is so bad sometimes that it's really funny, and it's just I'm probably liking it for
So
all the wrong
good.
reasons. I do like the Sandman arc, how they kind of, I mean, they did kind of retcon Uncle Ben's death, but it's
Yeah.
nice how they made like the villain. You can see why he did it. You have a daughter, then the scene of him becoming Sandman through his sheer will to get to his daughter. I think that's a beautiful scene, and I just really enjoy Spider-Man 3.
Kicking off my top three list has got to go to Spider-Man: Homecoming. I think that this film works because it is telling the MCU through the perspective of a high schooler. The movie finds a way to make Spider-Man grounded in this world where you have Hulk smashing cars outside his window and Iron Man flying up to Avengers Tower. It has a great middle ground inside of the MCU as this being like the high schoolers, the smaller people, the citizens. What do they think of the MCU heroes? So that's what I really like. I also really like Vulture and seeing his more relatable backstory and everything like that because he did get cheated by the government. The government did lay him off, take him off his job, and that's how he became a villain. But he's not doing it because he's evil. He's just doing it so then he can provide for his family. So yeah, Spider-Man: Homecoming is a great film and one of the most rewatchable ones.
For my number three is actually Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Now, the thing with Spider-Verse, people overrate this movie so much. Like, so many
Mm-hmm.
people are like, the perfect Spider-Man movie. This movie is very good. Like, it set a new bar of expectations for animated movie. Just like how much time they put into this movie, making it at 22 frames per second. So if you pause at any moment, it looks like a scene straight ripped out of a comic book. And it really brought Miles Morales as a character who was really only known by a bunch of hardcore fans into this fan favorite character that got his own game now. And I think it's a really good movie for like the African American community. So it's like you get this kid who looks like you swinging around, stopping buses, fighting villains. I have it at number three
Mm-hmm.
because I don't really rewatch this movie a lot because it's kind of slow at first, but it is a really good music. It's got amazing visuals, great animation. It's just all around a pretty good movie.
My runner-up at number two is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. I mean, I was when I first saw the teaser or like the trailer for this movie, like I didn't know what to make of it. I just thought, oh, it's Miles Morales, the Black Spider-Man. Like I knew of Miles Morales from the Ultimate Spider-Man TV show, but I didn't know how good the movie was gonna turn out. Like you said, every frame that you stop at, like every time that you pause the movie, there's something new in there. Like there's some hidden detail inside of each frame of this movie that I really enjoyed. I just love the relationship between Prowler and Miles. I don't know if like that's a big key thing of like why this movie is so big. Also, Miles dealing with the pressure of like expectations, growing up, having responsibilities. That's something that I can relate to now. So I think that giving Miles Morales his own origin story while also being a Spider-Verse film, bringing in all these different other Spider-Men. You have all of these characters, but it's still a Miles Morales story.
But my number two is Spider-Man Homecoming. Now, Spider-Man Homecoming, I think it was a great movie to have to introduce a character, a fan favorite character with a new actor after his debut in Civil War. And it's just really good because it's less of a Spider-Man movie and more of just a Peter Parker high school story. You see him and just doing normal stuff with his friends, and then he gets swept into this big world, like you said, where Hulk could be outside of his window smashing cars, and Iron Man is flying over his head as he's walking down the street. And it really does, like, it's you can see like into the MCU how we see it in if as if they were to exist in our world. They're just like big
Mm-hmm.
celebrities. Some people don't like to think he's Iron Boy Jr. But I think it's really good how this Spider-Man, like, he always has like a mentor figure that he has to try and live up to or like live apart from. Like, he needs to prove that he's not the next Iron Man. And I really like this is one of the MC movies where it actually has a great relatable villain. He's just a villain, but you can see where his point of view comes from. So that's why I think Spider-Man: Homecoming, one of the best Spider-Man films, and it's my number 2.
Coming in my number 1, Spider-Man 2.
Ah,
Yeah, you already guessed it. Hey, this
yeah,
is the
your opinion.
first superhero movie I've ever seen. Green Goblin kills himself basically by his own glider. So then the consequences of that leads into Spider-Man 2. Peter, he's very relatable inside of this film because he has bills. He has trouble getting to class because he has this responsibility, and he knows that either I can go to class and succeed in life and like pay my bills on time, I will succeed in life. But at the same time, I have this great responsibility that I need to fulfill. And I think that that's works perfectly well for a Spider-Man film. Peter just wants a normal life, but he knows that he has this great power and he has to use it with responsibility. And that makes this movie the best Spider-Man film that I've ever seen.
Ah,
And
whatever.
yeah, but the stuff with him losing his power is psychological. I think it works thematically, but I just think what this film does to relate to Peter Parker more, it has to come in at number 1.
My number 1 is Spider-Man: Far From Home. I just think this movie is so great. Spider-Man: Far From Home it's the same Peter from Spider-Man: Homecoming, but you can tell how he's just scarred by Endgame. Like, he's like, this was a catastrophe. Like, he even died. Like, he lost some of the people that he looked up to. Tony, it's like, he just wants to get away from it all. He wants to go on a trip, and it's kind of, he has to balance being Spider-Man with being Peter. And I do like the dynamic how you can see him. He's is he gonna get with MJ? Or is he gonna stop by what was his name, Brad? Or is he going to be Peter in Europe? And I like how Mysterio is a golden standout of this movie. Mysterio is one of the best MCU villains ever. It keeps the same theme of just us seeing the MCU from a high schooler's perspective. You have the Mysterio scene. The Mysterio scene is one of the best scenes in any Marvel movies. And every time I watch Far From Home, I get a good laugh out of it. It's one of my favorite movies to just put on and laugh to. That's why it's my number 1.
That was it for the ranking. Please note that everything that we did say in this video was just our very own opinions. Our lists were certainly not the right list. It was just our list, and you're free to comment down below your ranking of all 9 Spider-Man and Venom films ranked from the worst to the best, just like us, or you could just do your favorite. Oh yeah, Jonathan, where can we find you on the internet?
Just check us out, the regular podcast. We're currently doing our DCU rewatch, so just make sure you check a new podcast every week. Just make sure to come by, leave a like, and subscribe.
Yep, Shazam will be out next week on Wednesday. Like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace.